Opportunities we had to make a decision timely disappear. Our decisive opposing counsel gains ground. The client sees our insecurity and our indecisiveness. The judge thinks we don't have confidence. All those things flow from our desire to be perfect. Welcome to the Free Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Gary Miles. Picture this. You're in court. The judge looks up. Opposing counsel just made an unexpected motion that has the potential to torpedo your entire case strategy. And your client's future hangs in the balance. You have 15 seconds to decide. Your heart races. A dozen thoughts flood your mind. Should I object and risk looking unprepared or making a mistake? Should I stay silent and lose critical ground? What's the precedent? How will the judge react? What are the implications? But here's the thing. Time doesn't wait for perfect analysis. It demands a decision. It demands a decision right now. If you've ever felt that stomach-dropping moment of decision paralysis, you are not alone. And here's what might surprise you. The issue is not that you don't know enough. It's that you have been trained to overthink. I'm Gary Miles, and after 40 plus years as a trial lawyer and managing partner, I've learned this truth. The attorneys who thrive aren't necessarily the smartest or the most knowledgeable. They're the ones who trust themselves enough to make decisions and to take action when it matters most. And today I'm going to show you how to transform decision anxiety into decisive action so you can lead with confidence instead of second-guessing yourself into paralysis. Why do so many brilliant lawyers freeze when they have to make an important decision? Part of it is the perfectionist trap. We're striving for flawless decisions, trying to make sure we do just the right thing. We don't want to make a mistake. We want to get it right. And that perfectionistic tendency creates paralysis. We don't make a decision until we're absolutely certain. We've looked at every angle. We've thought about it endlessly. And it makes it so hard to make a prompt and decisive resolution of the issue before us. You know, I graduated number one in high school, college, and law school, and I strove to be as good as I could be, but that perfectionism became my biggest obstacle. It led to procrastination, paralysis, indecisiveness, lack of confidence. They all flowed from my perfectionism. And our legal training only amplifies this. We're taught to spot every problem, to think of everything that could possibly go wrong, to consider every single angle. And that leads us to hesitating and making a decision, being indecisive, struggling to get all the facts and all the information we might possibly need to talk to others. But see, here's the key. Here's the thing to know. That hesitation often costs us much more than imperfection. Opportunities we had to make a decision timely disappear. Our decisive opposing counsel gains ground. The client sees our insecurity and our indecisiveness. The judge thinks we don't have confidence. All those things flow from our desire to be perfect. And there are other costs to this analysis paralysis. And you'll see warning signs in yourselves and others. You know, researching the same questions repeatedly, looking for every possible piece of information before you make a decision, getting opinions from so many other people on decisions that really are quite straightforward. And I follow what I call the 80% rule. When you have 80% of the information you need to make a decision, when you have 4/5 of the facts and knowledge you need, it's time to decide, because gaining that last 20% takes as much time as the first 80%, but truly adds little value. See, effective, efficient, confident legal practice rewards timely action much, much more than perfect analysis that's delivered too late. Those decisions that are too late cost our client, even if they would have been right if they were made in time. Making a choice now, making a decision when it's time, works out much better. And part of it is we lack trust in our judgment. Because of our perfectionism, because of our imposter syndrome, our self-doubt, we sometimes lack confidence in ourselves to make the right decision. And those around us sense it, the other lawyer, your client, the court. And this is what I want you to know. Your professional intuition is already there. No matter how many years you've practiced, you have thousands of hours of experience. And that experience is a powerful asset. You've handled cases where those kinds of objections were made before. You've handled negotiations where that issue has come up. You've had clients ask you similar questions. You have the background and the experience that creates intuition, that creates insight, that allows you to make good decisions. And I urge you to separate the process of making the decision from the outcome. I've learned I've made a lot of great decisions that have bad results due to factors beyond my control. Now, I'm a bit of a football fan, and I've seen times when our coach might have called the exact right play for my poor Baltimore Ravens. But what happens? The play doesn't work. One of the players blows a block, and the running back gets tackled in the backfield. Does that mean we should have thrown the ball? No, not necessarily. It may have been exactly the right decision at the time, but bad results happen because of a factor beyond the control of making that decision, where a player made a mistake. And this is the key insight. Your decision confidence grows when you understand and leverage your unique capabilities. You have certain talents, certain areas of expertise, certain things you're good at, and you need to make choices that capitalize on what you do exceptionally well. And I encourage you to learn to trust what you're seeing, to look at similar challenges that you've had in the past, similar decisions that you've had to make, because what you're facing today is very likely similar to something you faced before. Draw on that history, draw on that experience. That intuition, that gut feeling will so often be correct. And I'd also suggest that you create a hierarchy of your decisions, because not all decisions deserve the same analysis. First, we have foundation decisions. That's your overall case strategy or matter strategy. How do you intend to handle this to get the best result for the client? What are your goals, and how do you intend to accomplish them? That requires deep thought and analysis and perhaps consultation. Then we have tactical decisions. Once we have our strategy, what do we do? What do we do next? For example, what are our methods of discovery? Who are we going to depose? Who are we going to subpoena records from? That requires analysis, but much less than our case strategy. And then you have execution decisions. What do you do on a daily basis to forward those methods you chose to accomplish that strategy? They're routine choices. I have to draft my interrogatories today. That's quick action. And it's also important to determine how many resources to allocate to the decisions you're making. How much time and energy should you spend on that issue? And sometimes we spend so much time torturing ourselves with making simple decisions that are not, on the whole, that significant. These are the criteria you should look at. What is the impact of that decision? How significantly will it affect the outcome of the matter? The second is urgency. How time sensitive is this? What is the time frame when a decision has to be made? Cost. What are the financial costs or expenses? And what's the opportunity cost in making that decision and when it has to be made? And finally, reversibility. Can the decision be changed if circumstances shift or if it turns out not so well? So that's the criteria to look at: impact, urgency, cost, and reversibility. So high impact, irreversible decisions, those that are urgent and important and can't easily be changed, they deserve the most attention and analysis. Low impact, easily reversible choices, make them quickly. You can always change your mind. So don't spend hours deciding what kind of discovery software you should be using when you need to strategize your case. So preserve your mental energy for what actually matters. And one thing that I think is very helpful in your decision-making process are decision deadlines. They're really your secret weapon. And I encourage you to create 3 different boundaries. A deadline to research the issue. What information do you have to gather, and what's a time frame when you have to gather it? Then a date to make your decision, and then a date to implement your decision. And without those decisions, without those boundaries, your decisions, they just drift infinitely. There's no time frame, there's no process. You're not holding yourself accountable. So set a time frame from obtaining the facts and information you need to make a decision. Set a deadline for making the decision, and then a date when it will be implemented. And these are some critical questions to ask yourself. What opportunities are you missing by not deciding? What client value am I failing to create by putting the decision off? And what professional growth are you delaying? See, the cost of indecision is almost much higher, much greater than the cost of an imperfect decision. And what I've learned too is that our confidence builds on itself. Each confident decision you make builds your capacity for the next one. It's not about being right 100% of the time. It's about building trust in your process and your ability. You're not going to get every decision right. Sometimes you're going to make a good decision, the outcome's going to be bad. The outcome is not what it's about. It's about your process in making the decision. And I encourage you to keep a decision journal on your key decisions. Track what your choices are. Write down what your reasoning is and why. Then write down the outcome and what lessons you can learn from that. And you can learn from all outcomes, good and bad. But judge your outcome, judge your decision-making choice by the process and by the information available to you, not by the results you achieved or didn't achieve. So I found a decision journal really helps you to clarify your process, to explain your choices, and then to evaluate how you did. See, your confidence in your decision-making grows through your experience and your reflection. But like everything else in law, it doesn't come from perfect results because we never ever have them. There are too many things beyond our control that we simply cannot control the outcome, but you can control your process. I work with managing partners and successful attorneys who look like they have it all figured out, but behind closed doors, they wrestle as well with the same decision paralysis, the same perfectionism, the same self-doubt. And what I've learned from 46 years in this profession, from my federal court practice, from managing my firm, from winning cases and losing cases, from my own recovery journey, is that freedom comes when you start trusting yourself to act. And what I'm sharing here today is resonating with you. If you're tired of second-guessing yourself into paralysis, let's talk. I offer a complimentary coaching call where we can explore what's really holding you back and create a path forward. You can click on the link in the show notes, or you can find me at GaryMiles.net or email me, Gary@GaryMiles.net. So what are some steps for practically implementing a better decision-making process? Well, there are several. The first is, when you begin your day, identify your 3 most important decisions you have to make that day, with the deadlines we talked about before for securing the information, making your decision, and implementing it. So write those down at the beginning of the day and set those boundaries. And set time limits on research for your different decision types. And then develop a network of colleagues you can call on who can provide perspective without enabling paralysis. And the goal is to access valuable viewpoints from friends and colleagues of yours in the practice to inform your judgment, but not to outsource your decisions. And you'll find that setting these boundaries for time limits for researching, setting a time in the day and first thing in the morning where you decide what decisions you're going to make, they're so liberating because now you have a plan. And I've seen from my own practice, I've seen from lawyers I work with, that when you begin to make decisions with greater confidence, it influences so many people around you, the junior attorneys, your staff, your clients. And when you model decisive leadership, you create a culture that values action. Clients trust attorneys who provide clear, timely guidance. They will see it. They will see your belief. They will see your decisiveness, and they will appreciate it. The colleagues who work around you will respect you because you make tough choices under pressure. And your stress will decrease when you begin to trust your own judgment. You're not just changing your decisions. You're not just making better decisions, but you're actually transforming the entire practice culture. The whole mood around you will change. Here's what I want you to remember: that legal education you earned, those years of experience you have, every case you've handled, every client you've served, every challenge you've faced, they have all prepared you for this very moment. You already have what you need to make confident decisions. The only thing standing between you and decisive action is your own decision to start trusting yourself. So here's my challenge to you today. Think of one decision you have been postponing, one issue you've been unable to decide. Maybe it's a case strategy. Maybe it's a difficult client conversation. Maybe it's setting a boundary in your practice. Maybe it's how to handle a colleague who's struggling in their practice. Apply what we've talked about today. Trust your professional training. Set a deadline. Make the decision. Take action. Then build on that success with your next decision. Because here's the truth I've learned over 4 decades. The attorneys who thrive, they don't wait for perfect certainty. They are the ones who trust themselves enough to act when it matters the most. You've got this. And if you want support on your journey, I'm here. Visit GaryMiles.net to schedule that complimentary session, and let's work together to transform your decision anxiety into decisive confidence. I'm Gary Miles, and this is The Free Lawyer. Until next time, trust yourself and practice law with purpose while living your life with freedom. Thank you so very much for being with me here today. And as always, please be well, be safe, and be free.